So we're going to just have a great conversation. And the first thing I want to ask Kim, first of all, thank you for being our first guest on Tea with Tina.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just honored to be able to have this chat today.
Well, good. Well, the whole idea is that we just have a chance to visit and get to know each other a little bit. And then this way, everybody who's watching gets a chance to get to know you a little bit. So the first question I have to ask is, what is your tea today?
It is chai.
Oh, that's good. Well, I'm drinking iced tea made by my husband, Archie, with constant comment tea, which was always my mother's favorite. So it's kind of a tradition around the household. So, all right, well, let's get going. I want to just learn a little bit more about you. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about your family and your life and what you do in, kind of what your life is like in Rochester.
Sure. So I've lived in Rochester since I was 9. I was an IBM transport. And then I went to public school here in town and went off to Winona State for college and then came back here to start my family. And I've lived here ever since. I am I went to school to be a special education teacher, but really found a passion in advocacy and policy. And so I'm currently a policy lead for the state of Minnesota with the Department of Human Services. And I have a large, diverse family that keeps me very busy. I've been married to my wonderful husband, Lamar, for 15 years this October. And together we are raising 5 children, 2 of which are our biological children, 2 of which are children that joined us in a little bit less traditional manner, who we had guardianship and custody of for the last 4 years. And then 1 is a foster child. So we are just very busy doing all the things all the time. So we've always got sports and football and dance and wrestling and all the things.
So how is your family managing with 5? Give me the age range of your kids.
So our eldest is 18 and he graduated from high school last year. And then we have a 16-year-old and then a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, and then 5, almost 6. She'll tell you she's going to be 6 in 6 days. So
how are you managing with your working from home and your 5 kids and all the disruption with COVID, and how are you managing all of that?
Really? Okay. It's been a little bit. The other thing about my kids is that my 10-year-old has autism, and my baby or my 5-year-old has a pretty complex health condition. She has a disorder called mast cell activation syndrome. So this COVID thing is pretty dangerous for her. And then my others have some learning disabilities and some other things. And so it was a struggle last spring, but we made it through, and we'll make it through this fall. I am super lucky. I have a partner. My husband is my partner through all things. And so he just picks up where I am not, and I pick up where he is not, and we just kind of roll with it. The other thing about having 5 kids is you roll with it. Like,
you have
nothing
to.
ever goes.
I can't tell you the number of times that I've heard Minnesotans tell me that. I heard this from a farmer in southern Minnesota a couple of weeks ago who said that when it comes to COVID, we're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. And it just gets at the point that everybody's lives have been so affected by this. Their worries about their health, their family, their well-being, their economic lives, and so it's just really been I think it's been really kind of overwhelming for a lot of people. It's one of the reasons that I've been spending so much time focusing on mental health issues and making sure that people all over the state have access to healthcare, including mental health care, because to me, mental health and physical health are all the same thing, right?
Absolutely. And the isolation is a real thing. I mean, it's a very real experience, and the extra stressors, right? That are just never something you could have planned for. And so it's disrupting folks' mental health. It's disrupting, I think, physical health as well. I mean, I think everything has changed. And it's really hard.
Well, I so admire the work that you do, working in public service, focusing on education issues and health issues. Tell me a little bit about how your life experience shaped your decision to run for public office, which is a hard thing to do.
Yeah, it is a hard thing. And it was kind of this weird metamorphosis. I was teaching and I loved teaching. but I felt like I was always having to pick between what worked for the school and what worked for the building and what worked for the budget and what worked for kids. And I
Yeah.
didn't like it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, okay, I'm going to go into nonprofit. So I went into the advocacy world and I adored it. I loved being in advocacy, but I kept hitting these same walls, right? And they were policy walls. And so I was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, if I can't fix it as an advocate, then I'll fix it in policy. And so I made
That's
the
so
jump.
interesting. Yeah. So you started out in the classroom doing a lot of really, really good work, and then you moved to advocacy, and then you said, wait a minute, I can, instead of being the advocate, I can be the person who's making the policy, who's changing the way things need to work.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm a policy lead at DHS, and I got there and I love my job. It's so wonderful. And I love everyone I work with. And I realized that policy is only as good as legislation.
Mm-hmm.
So that seemed like the next natural place to try to make change.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so tell me a little bit about, even in this COVID world, I'm sure that you are talking to lots and lots of people in the House district that you hope to represent. What are you hearing from people about what's on their minds? What keeps them up at night? What is it that they really want to be seeing, and what are they looking forward to?
And I think it's the same things you're hearing. I'm hearing a lot about concerns about healthcare. I'm hearing a lot about concerns about employment
Mm-hmm.
when healthcare was linked to employment, and now without employment, and how do I get healthcare? Um, and I'm hearing a lot about housing and our rising cost
Yeah.
of housing, and not
Mm-hmm.
being able to find housing that they can afford with their income. Those are some major concerns. And then, of course, in this COVID time, we're hearing a lot about, concerns about the fall from a lot of parents. I'm hearing a lot of concerns
Worried
about
about the fall. Yeah.
really a lot of worries around childcare. If my
Mm-hmm.
school is going hybrid and my kids are home 3 days a week and I have to work and I'm not considered a tier 1 worker, what do I do?
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's really showed us, COVID has kind of pulled the curtain back and really showed us where our safety net isn't working for people.
Yeah. It's so true. This is exactly what I'm hearing all over the state. This isn't a rural and small town issue or a big city issue. It's an issue that everybody is going through. And, I have, heard from Minnesotans that COVID is not the great equalizer. It doesn't affect everybody equally too. I mean, it affects everybody, but not everybody in exactly the same way. And this issue of childcare is so important because even before COVID, we had a real shortage of the childcare that families need. And this is a family issue because you want to know that you've got a safe, secure, happy place for your child to be. But it's also an economic issue because if you don't have that place, your family, your job doesn't work. You can't go to work. And have you heard people talk about the problems with the affordability of childcare and how that is such a barrier for families? It's just so expensive.
Yeah, and as somebody who has 5 kids, we have experienced that.
Yeah.
We had to do split shifts and divide up and conquer and hire help here and there, and rely on family and friends, and a variety of things, because it's so expensive, but we have to pay our childcare workers a fair wage. And so
That's right.
it's that balancing act of trying to figure out how to meet the needs of both. And many times, I've talked to a couple of childcare workers who said if their daycare center that they worked at didn't give them free or discounted tuition for their child, they couldn't
Mm-hmm.
afford to work there and pay
Mm-hmm.
childcare.
Oh, I know. I've heard the same thing. One of the things I've been really fighting for in the Senate is a bill that I've introduced. I'm working on it with Elizabeth Warren and Patty Murray and leaders also on the House side. And it would provide a major infusion of support into our childcare system, because right now with COVID, roughly half of all childcare centers in the country are at risk of closing because they cannot manage through this crisis. So the bill that Elizabeth and I are introducing would provide infusion of support to child care centers. I'm thinking especially of those, home daycare providers and centers that we have in communities all over the state. And do you know that 1 in 4 zip codes in Minnesota has a shortage? It's called a childcare desert, right? Because there are, I think, 3 children for every open spot, and that is getting worse, not better. So this is one of the things that we're fighting for in the next round of rescue and recovery for COVID to make sure that those centers get the health, the care, the resources that they need so that they'll still be there for your family and other families in the district.
Well, and childcare is so linked to employment, and it's so linked to women's rights, because so many times, and not always, but so many times women end up having to step out of the workforce to fill that need in their families. And if I want to open a business and there's no childcare, I'm going to have a really hard time bringing in employees. And so it's not a service just for families. It benefits the entire state,
the entire community. Right. Well, you're going to have such a strong voice on this issue in the legislature, and we need more people who are really focused on this and raising up this issue, because it is, as we were just saying, it's a family issue and it's an economic issue. But let me ask you this: for people who've don't know that much about House District 25A, tell us a little bit about the district and what you want people to know about the district.
So 25A is a really unique district. It extends to the northwest part of Rochester and then down Highway 14. It's got Byron, Casson, and Dodge Center. So it's a huge mix of rural and urban. And the people who live here are passionate, and they are kind, and many of them work at the Mayo Clinic or have a family member that works at the Mayo Clinic. So it's very healthcare driven. And the communities are changing. The demographics in our community is changing. Rochester's had a pretty big swell in population, and with that, so have the small communities near us. And they've had the blessings of that, and also the struggles of, like, schools not needing more space, and needing more housing, and needing more road improvement, because when more people are driving on the same road every day, roads don't do as well. And so those are the things that we're kind of dealing with down here in southeastern Minnesota as we kind of move into this new territory of no longer being, I mean, Rochester was always a small city, but we're quickly moving out of small and into much larger.
Well, the growth that's happening in the city, and the the efforts to diversify the economy in Rochester and make sure that Rochester is a place where everybody has an opportunity to do well, that there is equity and opportunity, is a really, really important thing. But let me ask you this: sometimes folks on the other side of the political aisle try to suggest that there's this big rural-urban divide, that that there's that there's just such a big difference between urban areas and rural areas. But it's interesting because this district that you are looking to represent has kind of a little bit of both. It's got rural and small towns, and also a bigger city. Do you see that rural-urban divide in the district?
The main things that people are worried about don't change. They're still worried about healthcare. They're still worried about being able to feed their families. They're still worried about quality education for their kids. It's not as different as I think it maybe used to be. And the other thing about this community is so many of the folks that live in Byron and Casson and Dodge Center and Manorville, I forgot Manorville, many of those folks, either both or one of the people in that household work in Rochester. And so, they really just blend. The needs really blend. And from my house to my best friend's house in Casson is 25 minutes, 30 minutes. It's not a long drive. It's a quick hop, skip, and a jump. And so the communities are really starting to blend together, and there's not so much of a difference, because everybody's concerns are the same.
Right. And I think, I always say that I don't think most people don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm a Democrat and I need to get my kids to school, or I'm a Republican and I need to figure out how to pay my bills. People are just trying to figure out how to make their lives work. And I think they want people like you and like me, who are representing them in St. Paul or at Washington, D.C., to be listening to them and paying attention to them, and not just sort of, participating in the political back and forth, which never really solves anybody's problems, right?
Right. And we have to come together to find solutions that work for everyone, to make this, the state and the country work for everyone. It's not about this side or that side, or rural or urban, or any of those things. It's really about just solving the problems. And that's why I so admire you and why I was so honored when you asked me to come, because when I had a problem as a constituent, you and your team worked to try to help solve it. And I think when we have leaders who get to work and work to solve problems, we move forward. So
That's
I
good.
do want to thank you
Yeah.
again so much for having me.
You're welcome. Well, let me just ask you, I think we're almost out of time, but let me ask you one last question. So I love local food and drink. And so is there any one place that you'd want to make sure that you told people to come and visit in your district? I'm not asking you to pick favorites because that's too hard when you're a legislator, but any one place that you think people should know about?
So we have a wonderful local restaurant called the Tap House, that is Tap House West. And it's pretty new. They had a downtown location for a long time, but now they just have their West location. And it's a great place to sit out on a patio and have a wonderful meal with friends. It's beautiful.
That sounds nice. Well, listen, so, I was just thinking as I was getting ready to think about talking with you, and I just wish you the very best. I look forward to campaigning with you and winning together House District 25A. But one thing I just want everyone to think about is that right now there are 65 women in the Minnesota legislature out of 201 legislators. There are 25 women in the United States Senate out of 100. So I think that it makes a difference to have women's voices heard on all of the issues, Kim, that you and I have been talking about, on economic issues, childcare, healthcare, education. Your experience, I think, will just bring so much to the Minnesota House, led so well by the Madam Speaker, Melissa Hortman. It's fantastic to have a woman speaker also. So I want to just wish you the very best of luck, and I know you're going to do great. And I want to just also say to everybody who's listening that if you want to get more involved in this campaign, this most important election, I think every day it feels more important to me. I want to invite you to go and visit mobilize.us/Team Tina. And at that website, you'll be able to figure out how to get connected to all sorts of volunteer activities. And even though we're not knocking on doors like we normally would, because of COVID, we are still doing lots and lots of work and working up and down the ballot to make sure that we win on November 3rd. And of course, don't forget that you can vote early and vote absentee. And don't wait until the last minute to do that. Take that opportunity right away. So thank you so much, Kim. It's great to be with you. And I look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail, even if it's virtual.
Yes, thank you so much.